From Tokyo, Japan and New Plymouth, New Zealand, this is Down to Business English with your hosts, Skip Montreux and Samantha Vega.
Hello, Samantha.
Hi, Skip. It's been a while since we last spoke. You've been under the weather.
I have been, yes. Pretty bad cold slowed me down for a couple of weeks.
That's a bit unusual for you. A long time to have a cold.
I think it's my age showing, but I seem to be mostly recovered now. How about you, Samantha? How have you been?
I've been doing well, thanks. Just had a week off work.
Oh, that's nice. Did you do anything special?
Nah, not much. Just stayed around the house and relaxed and tried my best to stay dry.
Tried to stay dry? What, is it raining over there in New Plymouth?
Well, it is sunny now, but last week we did have a lot of rain.
Wow, that must have put a damper on your week.
Yeah, honestly, I don't mind. It keeps everything green.
That's what I really admire about you, Samantha. You are such an optimist.
Well, glass half full. I think it's funny how people complain about getting too much rain when there are so many places in the world where rain, or more specifically, water, is in short supply.
True enough. In fact, the topic I want to report on today comes from a part of the world where managing water resources is a very serious issue.
Really? Where's that?
Ethiopia. They have just inaugurated the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or the GERD, on the Blue Nile.
Ah, I've heard about that.
It's Africa's largest hydroelectric project, and it's meant to help solve the country's chronic power shortages.
But isn't the dam causing tension with Egypt and Sudan?
It is. Ethiopia sees it as a national triumph, while Egypt and Sudan are worried it could reduce the flow of the Nile River, which they rely on for nearly everything. Everything from drinking water, farming, and of course, industry.
Oh, so this isn't just a report about energy. It's also about managing one of the world's most important rivers.
That's right.
Sounds fascinating.
Then let's do it. Let's get D2B, down to business, with the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Power, water, and politics on the Nile.
So, Skip, before we get into all the details, can you give us a bit of background? Where exactly is this dam, and how big of a project are we talking about?
The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or the GERD, sits on the Blue Nile River in northwestern Ethiopia, near the border with Sudan.
The Blue Nile. Is that connected to the Nile River that goes through Egypt?
Yes. The Nile River is fed by two main tributaries, actually. The White Nile, which originates in East Africa near Lake Victoria, and the Blue Nile, which begins in Ethiopia. The two rivers converge near Khartoum in Sudan and form the Nile River.
I did not know that.
In fact, even though the White Nile is longer, the Blue Nile contributes far more water to the Nile River. Something like 80 to 85% of the total flow.
Interesting. So putting a dam on the Blue Nile would have a big impact on the Nile River.
That is a very good observation.
So tell me more about this GERD project.
Construction first began back in 2011, and after more than a decade of work, Ethiopia officially inaugurated the dam last month in September.
14 years in the making. That's a long time.
It is, but then again, this isn't just any dam. The GERD is the largest hydroelectric dam in all of Africa, and one of the biggest in the world.
How big are we talking exactly?
Big. It's 145 meters high and stretches 1.8 kilometers across the Blue Nile River. And behind the dam is a huge 780 square kilometer reservoir that holds 74 billion cubic meters of water.
780 square kilometers? That's massive. The same size as New York City.
Or Greater London.
It must be capable of outputting a lot of water.
When operating at full capacity, yes, the dam will generate over 5,000 megawatts of electricity, enough to power millions of homes across Ethiopia and neighboring countries.
And I imagine Ethiopia really needs that electricity.
Very much so. According to the government, more than half of the country's population still doesn't have reliable access to electricity.
Over 50% of the country doesn't have electricity?
Not a reliable supply, no. But the GERD is designed to change that. It will not only meet domestic demand, but Ethiopia will now also be able to export surplus power to countries like Sudan, Kenya, and Djibouti.
So it's a major step towards Ethiopia's economic development.
Exactly. From the beginning, the government has framed this entire project as a source of national pride and self-reliance.
It must have been expensive and required a lot of foreign investment.
Well, what is especially interesting is much of the funding came from Ethiopian citizens themselves through bonds and local contributions. Foreign loans and foreign investment were avoided for the most part.
Really? That's uncommon for a project of this scale.
It is. And that's part of the reason why the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam carries so much symbolic weight. It represents Ethiopia's effort to modernize and assert greater control over their own natural resources.
But it's also creating tension with Ethiopia's neighbors, countries like Sudan and Egypt, who depend on the Nile River.
This is where things start to get complicated. While Ethiopia says the dam will help regulate the Nile's flow, reduce seasonal flooding, and even protect downstream countries during droughts, critics see it very differently.
So the same project that promises energy and sustainability for one country could threaten water security for others. How are Egypt and Sudan reacting to the project? Obviously, they depend on the Nile River.
Yes, but for different reasons. For Egypt, it is an existential issue. The country gets about 97% of its fresh water from the Nile. Without that water, Egypt's farms, cities, and industries would all struggle to survive.
97%. Phew, no wonder they're worried.
Egypt fears that Ethiopia could one day restrict the river's flow by filling up the reservoir too quickly or by controlling how much water is released during dry years.
I can see their concern. Managing the flow of the Nile River gives Ethiopia a lot of control.
That's right. Even a small change in timing could affect irrigation in Egypt's farmland or the operation of its own Aswan High Dam.
And what about Sudan? It's located between Ethiopia and Egypt, isn't it?
Yes, Sudan sits right in between the two countries. So they are in a tricky position. On one hand, Sudan could benefit from cheaper electricity imports from Ethiopia and better flood control during the rainy season.
But on the other hand?
On the other hand, there are some risks.
Such as?
For one thing, there have already been reports of flooding linked to sudden water releases from the GERD. Sudanese farmers near the border claim they were not given enough warning when Ethiopia suddenly discharged water from the dam's reservoir last year. That created a lot of tension and damaged crops.
So Sudan is caught in the middle, potentially gaining electric power, but also facing the dangers of flooding if Ethiopia doesn't coordinate water releases with them.
Coordination is the key. Both Sudan and Egypt argue that Ethiopia has been acting unilaterally, operating the dam without a legally binding agreement on water sharing.
Which explains why the issue has become so political.
It certainly has. What began as an engineering project has become a major diplomatic challenge for the entire region.
Didn't Egypt bring the issue to the United Nations recently?
They did. At this year's UN General Assembly, Egypt denounced Ethiopia's handling of the dam, warning that any threat to the Nile's flow would be a threat to Egypt's national security.
And what was Ethiopia's response?
Ethiopia insists it has every right to use its own natural resources. It points out that the Nile originates within their borders and argues that the GERD will actually help all Nile countries by stabilizing the river's flow and generating affordable energy.
Well, hopefully they will be able to come to some sort of agreement. It sounds like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has the potential to bring power and prosperity to the whole region.
If the countries work together, yes, it does.
What about from a business perspective?
Excellent question, Samantha. From a business perspective, the GERD could be a real game changer for Ethiopia and the entire East African region.
Because of all the electricity it can produce?
Exactly. Once fully operational, it would make Ethiopia the largest power producer in Africa, ahead of South Africa and Egypt.
They'll have enough electricity for their own needs and some left over to sell.
Yes. Also, Ethiopia already has agreements in place to export electricity to Sudan, Kenya, and Djibouti, and it is negotiating potential deals with other neighbors, like South Sudan and Eritrea.
Power exports could become one of Ethiopia's major sources of foreign revenue.
Not only that, reliable electricity attracts investment, manufacturing, and infrastructure development.
Of course.
The government hopes cheaper power will encourage both local entrepreneurs and international companies to set up factories inside the country.
That could really boost employment and raise living standards.
It could. But there are challenges too. Investors remain cautious because of the regional tensions surrounding the dam. Political uncertainty always makes long-term projects riskier.
So, until the diplomatic issues are settled, some investors might hold back.
And there is another layer to it as well. The cost of construction. The GERD's price tag is estimated at more than $4 billion US. As I mentioned, much of which came from public bonds and domestic contributions. That is an enormous financial commitment for a developing economy.
So Ethiopia is betting big on this project paying off.
You could say that. If everything goes as planned, the GERD could transform Ethiopia into an energy hub for East Africa, supplying clean, renewable power across the region. But if disputes over water rights intensify, those economic benefits could be delayed or even undermined.
So in the end, the dam's success will depend not only on engineering, but also on diplomacy.
Precisely. The GERD shows just how closely business, development, and politics are linked, especially when water and energy are involved.
It will be very interesting to see how things play out from here.
It will. And on that note, I think it is time for us to get D2V down to vocabulary. The first expression on today's D2V list is in short supply.
A very common expression. You often hear this in business meetings.
When you say that something is in short supply, you are saying it is scarce or limited.
That there isn't enough of it to meet demand.
In the introduction of today's report, Samantha mentioned that in many parts of the world, water was in short supply.
I was saying that there are places where water is scarce or limited.
How would you use this phrase in a business situation, Samantha?
When there's a shortage of steel, chips, or other components needed for production, a company might say that raw materials are in short supply.
Perfect. So whenever you hear the phrase in short supply, something valuable or necessary is hard to get because there isn't enough of it.
The next word on today's D2V list is the adjective reliable. Something that is reliable is something you can depend on. It always performs well and works in the way you'd expect it to.
Right. When something is reliable, it is consistent and trustworthy. It never fails or breaks down.
In today's report, Skip used it in a negative statement. He said that more than half of Ethiopia's population does not have a reliable source of electricity. He was talking about how many people cannot expect a steady supply of power.
In a business setting, we might talk about a reliable employee, someone who always does good work.
Or a reliable supplier, a company that always delivers on time.
Every company needs reliable people and partners. The final word on our D2V list today is the adjective existential. Existential describes something that relates to the existence or the survival of something, often something very serious, or life or death in nature.
Right. When we call a problem existential, we mean it threatens someone's or something's very existence.
In today's report, I said that for Egypt, the issue of the Nile River was an existential one. Because 97% of its fresh water comes from the Nile, Egypt would struggle to survive without it.
In other words, because Egypt depends on the Nile for almost all of its water, any loss of that resource would threaten the country's survival.
Can you give us a business-related example using existential?
Sure. Many white-collar workers today face an existential threat from AI because the technology can do some jobs faster and cheaper than humans.
Existential, a powerful word for a very serious situation.
Would you like to help Down to Business English reach more people wanting to improve their business English skills? Follow Down to Business English on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any place podcasts are found. Leave a rating and a review and tell everyone how much you enjoy the show.
And that brings us to the end of today's report on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. We hope you enjoyed today's show and learned something new about how water, power, and politics are all connected along the Nile River.
It's an incredible project, both in scale and in impact. From Ethiopia's push for clean energy to Egypt's concern over water security, the GERD really shows how one development can affect an entire region.
And there's no doubt we will be hearing more about it in the months and years ahead. D2B members and Apple Podcast subscribers, the bonus Down to Vocabulary episode for today's report will be dropping very soon. In that bonus D2V, we will be looking at 5 more useful words and expressions from today's story.
Those words and phrases are to be under the weather, to carry weight, to act unilaterally, to denounce, and to settle something.
All great terms to add to your business English vocabulary.
They are.
If you are a D2B member, be sure you have copied and pasted your member-only RSS feed URL from your account page on the D2B website into the podcast app of your choice. That way you will be sure to get the bonus D2V episode as soon as it drops.
And if you're an Apple Podcast subscriber, you don't have to do a thing. The bonus episode will show up automatically in your feed.
Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next time.
Take care.
Down to Business English. Business news to improve your business English.